David Adams here, the voice of the ring, and the following is a presentation of the Mancast Network podcasts for the man in all of us.
Hey guys, it's the Princess of Pro Wrestling, SoCal Val from Fight TV, and I am a proud Opinion City girl.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Opinion City Podcast, a professional wrestling podcast where we debate the hottest topics of the past, present, future, and beyond. I'm your host. My name is Ralph Heinmarch. He's my co-host and tag team partner, and his name is Parmesan Russell. This podcast is for you, the listeners, so please reach out to us via email at opinionscitypod@gmail.com.
Before we get things rolling here, if you want to support the show, you can follow us at Opinion City Pod on all the socials. You can find the links to everything that we do over there. You can follow myself at Parmacheezel, and you can follow my buddy here, Ralph, at RealRalph316. If you like what you're hearing, like, rate, and review our show, and please share us with your friends. Without further ado, let's get into this week's topic. Ralph, what are we talking about today?
We got a good topic for today. This is one that we've been thinking about recently, and I'm really excited about it because I think it's a great topic. I think it's something that is used a lot in wrestling, but something that not many people really discuss. But we are talking today about the top 5 oddly paired wrestling tag teams in history, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and one team that recently has been an odd pairing, but that has been just so successful, surprisingly enough, has been this MJF and Adam Cole, Better Than You, Baby tag team. I don't know about you, but it's just been like, who knew they had such great chemistry together? Like, they're so good together.
You know, it's interesting because this is not a new thing, you know, where they have like the champion and the person who is expected to be like the challenger, you know. What they normally do is that, you know, they kind of build up this feud between them, and then right before they're supposed to wrestle each other, they throw them in a tag team match like a week before, and it's usually always a disaster. So I like to see the way that they're sort of taking this storyline, because I think it's really interesting to have two guys that honestly, on the spectrum of like good guys and bad guys right now, couldn't be further apart from each other, and yet here they are, like the absolute best of friends. They're better best friends than the best friends are.
Yeah, dude.
You know what I mean?
Like the backstage segments that they've been doing, the promos, the fact that they always give each other different things, like the same trunks, same jacket. When Adam Cole surprised MJF with a remixed theme song, and MJF's reaction was like just so happy and giddy. That was some of the best minute and a half segment I've ever seen on a show. Just the entrance was perfect. Like, it's going to be such a sad moment when they fall because they're so hot right now.
Everything they do is so perfect. The ring jackets are perfect. Like, you know, and we should have, it should not be a big surprise, because if we look at Adam Cole over the years, and some of the things that Adam Cole has done, especially in NXT, when you look at Adam Cole's NXT run, Adam Cole was pretty much the star of every single thing that he did. Every single thing that he was involved of, he was the star. So first you have that coming in, and then you have MJF, who, again, if you watch MJF's career, and we've touched on this a little bit before, if you've watched MJF's career over the years, starting with the independent promotions, starting with Beyond Wrestling on the East Coast, and just a lot of the indie stuff he did, you could see that he was not yet MJF. He was still, you know, Maxwell J. Friedman, but you could tell that the MJF thing was building. I mean, he was wearing the scarf back then, but you could just tell that it was building. And then when you look at some of the stuff he's done in AEW, especially the stuff he's done with Chris Jericho, I mean, first off, whoever thought MJF could sing, let
Sing,
alone
dance, like the dude can do it all.
he's an absolute entertainer, and everything he does is so good. That's the big thing. Like when you watch wrestling, and a lot of wrestlers will talk about this because it's not something that everybody normally gets, but like you can tell a story with your facials, and a lot of times you have to tell a story with your facials, and his are just amazing. Like you said, that reaction to the music. I mean, it was over the top. It was crazy. It was hokey. It was all that rolled into this perfect reaction.
You see him run to Adam Cole and give him a hug, and Adam Cole's like, "No, get off me!" Like it's just perfect. Like it was just like talk about a way to keep people entertained. That was just even that whole match from start to finish was just so entertaining. The dance off beforehand. Like I'm a fan of goofy wrestling, and goofy wrestling is just sometimes more fun than just regular wrestling. Like that's always why I love independent wrestling, because goofy wrestling for the win all the way, always.
Yeah, and they took the idea of best friends and like turned it to 11, which is great. It's really amazing. So I mean that's and they're like at the top of the wrestling world. Yeah. So they're gonna have all the big moments. They're gonna have all the big matches. They're gonna be featured. Pretty much quite a bit, because I mean you are really talking about two of the biggest stars in the company. So it'll be exciting to see what they're able to do with them before the fall comes, because I mean once the fall comes, then everything is just going to go in a complete other direction. Because honestly, I mean if you look at some of Adam Cole's promos with MJF, I mean those guys were throwing daggers. Those guys were not those guys were not lobbing softballs. This was 90 mile an hour hard pitch. No, certainly not. So I think they're going to have even more fuel to add to that fire once everything falls apart. So I'm super excited for that, because I mean I think that this could easily be feud of the year.
Oh, absolutely. Like even their match beforehand, that 30-minute draw was just from start to finish, was amazing. It was incredible. And if that says anything about their matches going forward, it's going to be not only this is such a fun team right now, but just a great feud once the fall happens.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I mean not only are they doing great things outside of the ring, but they kind of exemplify some of the things that are really going right with AEW, because there's a lot of people right now that will have opinions about AEW and say, well, they're not doing this right, or they're not doing this right, or they have all the negative opinions. But if you look at AEW, it seems to me like in some of these really high profile feuds, and even in some of the lower card matches that they have, like the wrestling at times is just super phenomenal. Like the wrestling is just heads and shoulders above other shows. So you can have all these great things outside of the ring, but then you also have a huge roster that you can look back on, and you can count on them no matter what to produce those amazing matches. I mean, you look at some of the guys they have in the company, and you look at even the younger guys like Wheeler Yuta. Wheeler Yuta is not amazing. He's not like the seasoned vet that some of the other guys are. He's more of like one of the younger guys on the block as far as that goes. He's not like seasoned like a CM Punk or a Daniel Bryan or things like that. But Wheeler Yuta is, he did not get included on our list during the episode of where we talked about underrated wrestlers. But I got to say, like, Wheeler Yuta is very, very underrated as far as his skills. So, that's just one example. I mean, you've got a guy like Orange Cassidy who is holding back because if you've seen him on the Indies and some of the things he's done on the Indies, not just as Orange Cassidy, but like we talked about this before, like he's a phenomenal wrestler, and you've got so many guys that are so talented. And then we're not even getting into the Ring of Honor roster yet, because I mean, Ring of Honor is all about the wrestling, and the guys that they have there, the fact that they're kind of like cross promoting Ring of Honor with AEW and bringing guys from Ring of Honor into AEW storylines.
Yep.
I mean, I think the fact that Claudio Castagnoli is everywhere right now, like you can see
he's
him with
literally
Blackpool
everywhere.
Combat Club, you can see him with Ring of Honor. That's amazing. That should make companies like WWE feel silly. They should feel silly and stupid because they had him and they blew it. I mean,
he should have been a world champion multiple times over in WWE, but they just didn't give him that chance.
They just didn't get it. They don't understand. They don't understand what he is. And I feel like there's this whole class of wrestlers that kind of go through that. I mean, WWE is notorious for missed opportunities as far as really talented wrestlers and not utilizing that because they don't see something else. Like they don't see the promo work that's what they want. And they don't see maybe the look is not exactly what they want. But these guys are having like, not to use a rating system, but these guys are having like 4.5-star matches consistently all the time. Mm-hmm. But, either nobody sees it because they won't push them or nobody sees it because they're like on main event or, like superstars or some nonsense. But I feel like he's part of that class. You could talk about him. You could talk about Drew Gulak. He's another one that, they come from that sort of Northeastern independent wrestling scene, and they come as amazing talents, but they just never get the credit that's due.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Wow. We were off in the middle of nowhere on that one, but
no, it happens.
I mean,
let's roll it back in. Let's get down to the brass tacks and get into our lists.
Let's do it because we got a lot to talk about.
Let's do a deep dive on these odd couple pairings.
All right, so why don't you throw out your first on the list, your number 5?
My number 5 is the more recent odd couple that came out between the 2020s, and that's RK Bro, Randy Orton, and Matt Riddle. When Riddle proposed a tag team with Orton, I don't think anybody thought it would work, let alone Randy himself. But man, did it work. The two had such an interesting dynamic at first, as Riddle was a babyface and Randy was the heel. But they just gelled so well together, and I think the difference in personality from both characters really helped make that team work. It eventually turned Orton into a full-fledged face, and they even won the Raw Tag Team titles multiple times together. It's just another example of an odd couple that like you wouldn't think would work, yet they gelled just so well. And their wrestling styles in the ring also surprisingly gelled so well.
So you look at a team like that, and I think they're a great example of not just, being a great sort of odd pairing, but I think they're a blueprint for how odd pairings should really work. So you're going to have the younger guy who you would look at him as, you would look at Randy as the veteran of the team.
Oh,
however, Riddle's been around forever. Riddle, did the indie scenes. He did the MMA. Riddle's got experience. He's obviously not the veteran that Randy is in WWE. He hasn't done the things that Randy's done. But you have Riddle, who is just absolutely super goofy. The guy is a serious wrestler who does not take himself seriously.
Nope.
So here we have a guy who, rides scooters to the ring. He's now listen, my wife likes 3 wrestlers. Okay. Those 3 wrestlers are Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, and those 2 are because she likes when they do like the whole bagpipes thing, and they do she's big on the, like when Drew McIntyre wore the kilt and the big sword, and she's into all of that because she was a bagpiper, so she's into all of that. Thirdly, for some reason, she is into Riddle, and I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that he wrestles barefoot, because she was like blown away by that. Yeah. But he does the whole like jumping in the ring and flipping the sandals off, and like, he is very not serious when it comes to outside the ring stuff. And then, when that bell rings, he turns it on. So you have that, and then you have this ultra sort of veteran in Randy Orton, who, is, if you kind of look at him, I feel like he's becoming like this revered status, because he's been around forever. He's done it all. I mean, he's had high profile feuds with just everybody that you can think of. And the reason I think that this tag team works so well, and again, I think this is where you look at the blueprint of why these tag teams work so well, is that the veteran in the team, the one who you never think would do the things that he's doing, is buying into it. He is, you could tell he's like 110% all in to that tag team, and it makes a difference on camera.
Oh yeah, like it just, like even leading up to when they finally became friends, it was just such great stuff. Like the backstage segments were hilarious because Riddle would try and get Randy to be his best friend, and Randy would just sigh, roll his eyes, like walk away. Like you could tell that Riddle was annoying him. So when my favorite part was before they were like a big tag team, RKO came out. Orton comes out, RKO's Riddle, but it wasn't as like a FU. It was more like a, hey, I can do this at any point, just so you know. Yeah. Like almost as a reminder, do not forget who I am, even though we're a team now. Like,
yeah, it's, I mean, you know, when you play around with that kind of stuff, like, you know, Randy Orton is one of those guys that, you know, you almost can never trust him. Like, no. You know, they call him the Viper not. For a reason. He's you know, he may be, you know, deadly to strike, but at the same time, he's also a snake in the grass. Yep. You never know when that man is going to turn on you. So, but you could tell though that by the time they got, you know, really deep into the tag team run and they were really firing on all cylinders, you could tell just how invested Randy was in the team. You could tell how much he enjoyed being in the team. You could see Randy smile and have fun, which, you know, when was the last time you can think of before RK Bro that you actually saw Randy smile and have fun?
Yeah, like it's one of those things with him, like, because he's always been such a great heel. Like he hasn't had a lot of face runs, and the one face run he had with Triple H wasn't that great. Let's be honest, it wasn't the best that we've ever seen. But I feel like this most recent face run with Riddle, it just, like we said last week with Razor Wing, it's just fun matches are fun, and to have fun is what should be the most important part of being a wrestler, is just having fun. And seeing Orton have fun with it is just, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, because that kind of stuff is contagious. When a wrestler goes out there and he has a really good time, he has a fun time in the match, you can tell he's really enjoying, you know, himself and having a good time. That's contagious. Then the crowd has a good time. And, exactly. You know, even, it's so strange because, like, even when Randy was a heel, there's this sort of air about him where people were still drawn to him. I mean, he would come out as a heel and you would have like pay-per-view audiences singing his theme song. You know, it's just, there was something, you know, infectious about him, and that played right into Riddle's strength, because I feel like Riddle's strength, not that he's not a great wrestler, because he is. He does a lot of great things in the ring. He brings a different style to his wrestling because he's able to rely a little bit on that MMA background to, you know, do some of the things he does. That kind of builds his repertoire to be different than others, but like he's got a great connection with the crowd. Like he knows how to go out there and just feed into that crowd and just eat it up. And yeah, he's one of those guys that just gets the whole point of going out there and reading the crowd and doing what needs to be done based on crowd reactions. It's just, you know, two different styles that are built on a lot of the same fundamentals, but different styles in wrestlers that just should never have worked together. And it worked better than, like you said, it worked better than anybody could have ever thought.
Yeah, because we're just solar opposites, and just to see them like come together like that, and Randy Orton gives in and hugs Riddle, and it's just like this, just the funniest, goofiest stuff, and that's why that is my number 5.
That's awesome. All right, so my number 5, and I have to say that of all the teams that I put on my list, my number 5 is my absolute favorite.
It's always the last one.
But I had to put them at number 5 because the other teams that I picked were just, There was no way I could put these guys ahead of them, but I had to put this tag team on here because I don't know. When I think of oddly paired teams, odd pairings, I mean, this is just so out there. So my number 5 team is the team affectionately known as Head Cheese. That would be Al Snow and the lethal cheddar, Steve Blackman.
Man, dude, talk about goofy wrestling at its finest. You talk about Al Snow, who at the time was, head, shaking the mannequin head. And then you had Steve Blackman, who was this serious, like, karate, MMA style fighter. And it was just, again, things that you would not think would work. They were a match made in heaven. It was short-lived, but it was some of the best goofy stuff you can possibly see in the ring, out of the ring. It's so good.
I 100% agree. So here you have a guy like Steve Blackman, who is a legitimate tough guy, a legitimate bad guy. And I mean, this was to the point where, I mean, he had a training school in mixed martial arts in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Like, this guy was legit.
Yeah.
I have heard some stories about, this is one guy you really didn't want to mess with. Then you have Al Snow. And Al Snow, to me, is there's so many interesting things about Al Snow. Now, obviously, the gimmicks that he's done, obviously the whole gimmick with Head was just, I mean, so out there, but so brilliant. Some of the things he's done over the years have just been phenomenal. The Job Squad was just a lot of fun. My favorite Al Snow moments, though, are when Al Snow, and if you look these up on YouTube, don't blame me if you fall out of your chair or you find yourself choking or because you're laughing so hard you can't stop.
Yeah.
Al Snow as European champion was some of the best television I can ever remember. Just every week coming out as a different country, dressing as that country. Head would be dressed up. He would have a picture of somebody from that country that he would then place on the announce desk, and it was so simple, so brilliant, so genius. So again, this is another situation where you have two guys that could not be further from each other, and yet somehow it worked. And even to the very end, they were a team that Steve Blackman never bought in. Blackman never bought in once.
Never bought in.
I mean, he got the cheese head, which Al Snow put on him when he deemed him Steve Blackman the lethal cheddar. And he didn't enjoy that. They had a mascot. Do you remember the mascot's name?
Oh, I do not.
They had a man dressed as a giant piece of cheese called Chester McCheesington.
Yep, I don't. Yeah.
And I use that name all the time. I reference that name whenever I'm making jokes or I need a fake name for something. I'm like Chester McCheesington. It's so just great. And again, this goes back to something you said before about just goofy, fun wrestling. It is such an infectious thing, and I think it gets such a bad rap sometimes because people are like, this is just goofy. Why would I want to waste my time watching this? This doesn't, take wrestling seriously at all. Listen, these are, grown men in spandex that are, throwing each other around the ring, and we're supposed to believe all these crazy convoluted storylines. I mean, are we supposed to honestly believe that the Big Show interrupted, or Big Boss Man interrupted the Big Show's father's funeral and then drove a homemade police car a la Blues Brothers, and the Big Show jumped on the hood and was hood surfing on the car as Big Boss Man drove away? Are we supposed to believe all of that is real? You know what I mean? Wrestling is meant to be fun. Wrestling is meant to be over the top. It's meant to be a little goofy at times. that doesn't mean that the wrestling is bad. That doesn't mean that, we have to be so down on it. But this is an example of where, being goofy just works. And
Exactly.
Steve Blackman was the perfect straight man to that group. I mean, Al Snow was so over the top with everything. And Steve Blackman, I mean, he could have won the World Series of Poker tour with that face.
Yeah, 100%.
It was just, I mean, because Steve Blackman has had some great moments in WWE. His match with Shane McMahon was just phenomenal. And again, part of that was because Shane McMahon was so willing to just go out there and do whatever. But Steve Blackman was a huge part of that equation. And for everything that Al Snow is, for everything that he's done in his career, I mean, the man has had a lengthy career, and when it comes to wrestling, I mean, the guy knows what he's talking about. Like he's worked behind the scenes at Impact, and he's considered to be a very smart and credible wrestling mind, despite everything that Mick Foley has said about him.
Yeah,
but and of course we all know Mick's joking. Nobody thinks Mick's actually serious about any of that. But yeah, it's just again, you have two guys, I think, and this I would say is tenet number 2 as far as looking at what makes an odd tag team work. We already talked about the veteran of the team really buying into it, but when you look at a team like this is a team that truly gets it and truly understands what their roles are as an oddly paired tag team. Like, they understand that their purpose is to go out there, be goofy, and get this idea over. I mean, it's like the quintessential wrestler that gets over every single gimmick that's just thrown at him, even the goofy, crazy, stupid ones. And that's like this team in a nutshell. They both know their roles. They know what they need to do, and they both get it. Like, they just understand what the tag team is about. They understand what they're supposed to be doing. So I think that's another big piece of, tag teams that are sort of oddly paired.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's move on to your number 4.
My number 4. I feel like I had to put this on the list because in my eyes, I feel like these two were one of the first major odd couple pairings they had. And that to me is the Mega Powers, Hogan and Randy Savage. Because at the time, Hogan was this big babyface, and for the most part of his career up to that point, Macho Man was this really big heel. So again, opposite, spectrums of the field there. And that yet after Mania 4, when Hogan helped Savage win that title tournament, they became a big tag team. They were, the big moment. Mega Powers were bonded, the handshake, the whole thing. That, for the time, I think was unheard of because there wasn't many odd pairings up until that point that were like polar opposites of each other that just worked. And I think having that team be the caveat for WrestleMania 5's main event with Randy and Hogan was just a perfect selling point leading into that match.
So for me, and we talked about this a little off the air before we started recording, but so I have 7 teams on my list. I came up with 7 pretty quickly, and obviously 2 of them I had to leave off. And I will say that I did think about the Mega Powers at one point. They are not one of my 7, but I did think about them at one point. And I guess for me, the reason I didn't put them on my list is I 100% completely agree with you that they are polar opposites. They are, just as different as could be. But for me, I thought that they were the 2 biggest stars the company had. Like these guys were the it factors. They had everything going for them, and I think that if you're going to take 2 guys like that and ultimately you're going to do a build up to a match together, this is a great way to really get that ball rolling. Honestly, everybody talks about, the Bloodline being the greatest storyline in, the last 20 years or whatever, possibly the greatest wrestling storyline of all time.
Yeah.
If I was picking the greatest wrestling storyline of all time, the Mega Powers Explode is easily my top choice every single time, hands down, without fail. The storytelling, the multi-year storytelling, because that's one of the things they always bring up about the Bloodline is, oh, it's been going on for so long. Well, so did Hogan and Savage.
Yeah.
That went on for a long time, and I don't really count any of the stuff they did after WrestleMania 5 as anything, because I don't really like the WCW stuff, and I don't buy into any of that. You know, I think no, it wasn't. They were trying to capture nostalgia that just didn't want to be captured, and but this Mega Powers Explode storyline, just phenomenal storytelling. I still think the Saturday Night Main Event where they broke up in a tag team match with the Twin Towers, I still think that was one of the single best wrestling shows of all time, in my opinion, just because that match was just so amazing. The breakup was so amazing. When they're in the like the doctor's office in the back, the little makeshift medical room, and Macho throws Hogan into like the one table, and all the medical supplies go all over the place. And I'm like, this is just, everything about it is genius. But again, you had two of the biggest names in wrestling, but I do agree, if you look at them, I mean, polar opposites of the spectrum, just, you know, just complete opposites.
And the whole, like, Randy's jealousy towards Hogan because he felt that he was lusting over Miss Elizabeth, and the whole, like, doctored promo where he fabricated the out of context footage of Hogan, like, lust. It was just, all that to me was just so good. Like, the whole, like, I just loved the way they set that up, where Randy literally was going insane over the fact that he thought Hogan was going after Miss Elizabeth. And it was just top tier stuff. Like, they never won.
Ooh, yeah, Hulk Hogan, you got lust in your eyes, brother. That was terrible, but like, that's one of my favorite lines.
That's one of my favorite promos. And like, you know,
so good.
They never won the tag gold, but for that time period, they were like a dream team that no one expected to become a reality.
They didn't win any tag team gold, but I will say this about them. As a tag team, I think that they had, for me, and just thinking about wrestling at that time, because again, we always talk about how wrestling at that time was so tag team centric. I just, their match with Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase at SummerSlam was just phenomenal. You want to talk about?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we can't say that any of those guys were necessarily the greatest, like, technical wrestlers at the time, but you want to talk about just pure excitement and just pure joy in a match. That's it right there. Like, that match for me is one of my favorite tag team matches of all time. That might be, like, in the whole Mega Powers Explode thing, that might be, with the exception of when they finally broke up, that might be like my favorite match of the whole thing. Even more than like the WrestleMania 5 match. Yeah. Like, it was just great stuff. And it showed you, you know, what really huge stars they were. Just good stuff.
Just all around, like, I think if we didn't have those two, I don't think Odd Couple Pairings would become an actual thing like it has, because those two, I think, kind of started it all. So that's my reason why they had to be on the list for my number 4.
Yeah, and if you look at them, you know, when you look at sort of, you know, like, you never had the two biggest stars in the company really team like that before. Even aside from looking at it as an odd pairing, like, you never saw, like, the top guys in the company, like, form a team like that. And I think it did so much, like you said, for this whole idea of just odd pairings together. So, I mean, I can totally see it. Like I said, they were definitely in consideration for me, obviously being such a huge Hulkamaniac as a young little Hulkster there. I was a big Hulkamaniac, huge fan. Years later, I really got into Savage, after the fact. I mean, I always thought Savage was good, but it was one of those things where, like, when I was younger, and watching wrestling at the time, first off, one of the things I didn't get to see was a lot of NWA/WCW stuff, because we didn't have that on TV where I lived growing up. So, I never got to understand the brilliance of Ric Flair while it was going on. Like, that was one of those things I fell into much later in life. Same thing with Macho Man, though. Even though I saw WWF programming at the time, I was always a big Hulkamaniac. And I just never really understood the brilliance of Macho Man until years later. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, then you start to see everything that's so great about him, the little nuances. He was one of those guys where if you watch his promos, there's all these little nuances that make it different than everyone else and better than everyone else.
Yeah, my favorite part is when he brings props in for his promos and just uses the props so nonchalantly in his promos. Like, you think of the Cream of the Crop promo, you think of the garbage can promo, you think of, like, he just uses you think of the coffee cup promo. Like, I think he brings props with him and just, like, implements them in his promo like it's nothing. It's just, was just some of the best work for the time. Like, just so good. Like, genius.
Very cool. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. So good pick. Like I said, I was considering them. They just did not make my list, unfortunately. However, a team that did make my list my number 4. So this was a really interesting. This was a really interesting, I think, team, based on the fact that you had someone who had a great career, was never really a world champion, and to a point was almost kind of losing his way for a little while. And then you had another wrestler who was out of the picture, out of the scene for a long time, and so this tag team was his big surprise return. So my number 4 is the former tag team champions of Owen Hart and Yokozuna.
Oh, you know what's crazy? I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers the other day, and I told him, I was like, you know what? I didn't even realize, and probably because I wasn't really watching it heavily at the time, I didn't know that they were a tag team. I didn't know that was a thing. So when I saw it, when I was doing my list, I was like, wait, they were a team? I didn't know. And it's such an odd pairing when you say those two names, you don't think a team at all.
Yeah, so Owen Hart Owen Hart was going up against the Smoking Guns, and he had a mystery partner. So it was back in 1995, and like, Yokozuna was well out of the title picture by this point. Just not really. And he had been off TV for a while. He was just kind of out of everything. So it was not only a huge surprise that he was Owen Hart's tag team partner, but it was a huge surprise to have him back on TV at all. And so just kind of, again, Owen Hart has had a lot of, tag team success, but I thought this was really just a very interesting pairing, because I think this was the kind of pairing that really took two guys that were kind of great on their own in their own respects for various different things, and then the tag team really sort of elevated them. I think it was. I definitely think it was bigger for Yokozuna than it was Owen Hart, because Owen Hart was going to be a star no matter what, and Yokozuna already had his time as star. This was a little later in his WWE WWF run, so I think it was meant more for him than it did Owen Hart. But I mean, it was like shock and awe when he came out. Nobody saw it coming. and it was a great tag team. They had, I believe their tag title run was like something like 170 some days, maybe. So it wasn't the longest run ever, but just to see them win the tag titles, it was just a cool thing. It was this sort of cool factor to it, because you had, interestingly enough, you had a different, almost, I wouldn't say a different side of Yokozuna, but we all remember Yokozuna. We all remember, like this sort of clean shaven version of Yokozuna, like when he was, wrestling Bret Hart at WrestleMania, things like that. This Yokozuna that came out had a beard. Like this was a decidedly different looking Yokozuna. Like Yokozuna had always been a heel, but now he was visually showing you he was a heel in a new way. Because we all know, like back then, if you're a heel, you grow a beard. If you're not a heel, you don't grow a beard. Like that was the international symbol for I'm a heel, is look at me, now I have a beard. Yeah. But it also gave him like this. It also gave him this cool factor. It was just something that I don't know. It just made him look cooler, to be honest. And it really gave the whole tag team a cool factor.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add, because I really didn't know that they existed until I did my research, and I was more around for that to be aware, because I didn't realize that they were even champions. Like that's a decent run for an odd couple like that. So like, just something I never knew existed until now.
Especially in the mid 90s, because I feel like in the mid 90s you had a lot of like gimmicked sort of like actual tag teams.
Yeah, actual teams.
Like something along the lines of the Smoking Guns, where they're not just like two singles wrestlers put together. However, I will say, as surprising as it may be, Owen Hart and Yokozuna fit together very well. It wasn't like, it was an odd pairing, but it wasn't an odd pairing that you wouldn't think would work together. It was something that you saw right from the beginning, that there was just this, sort of mutual respect among thieves, I guess is the best way to put it, because these are guys who are heels. They're not really supposed to respect anybody or anything, but thick as thieves they were, and they came up with that surprise, and they stole one from the Smoking Guns. They had no idea what they were in for, and just a fun tag team as far as I'm concerned. Definitely something a bright spot of that sort of mid 90s era, right? Like a year or two before the Attitude Era really hit hard. Like this was kind of the end of like that whole period of the early 90s there, but it was right before the cusp of the Attitude Era. So it was just cool to see.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, you're up.
All right. I was just telling Ralph off the air about this. I could have done a list all on Kane tag teams. Everyone knows how much of a Kane fan I am. I didn't, because that would be boring, but I had to at least mention a few of them on my list. So my first one, when you think about Kane and his list of partners he's had, you think about more about defining moments in Kane's career. All the teams he's had has been some sort of moment in his career path.
Sure.
And his odd pairing with Daniel Bryan is no exception. I love Team Hell No from the moment that they became a thing. For most of that year, 2012, Daniel Bryan and Kane were at each other's throats in a feud featuring two just very angry wrestlers. But rather than have it be this big blood feud, the GM at the time, AJ Lee, demanded they attend anger management therapy together. And this created some of the funniest and memorable moments between these two. And it was just magic from there. And of course, you cannot count out the MVP of all that, Dr. Shelby, in helping making that be such an epic series of videos with them backstage with Shelby. It was just stuff that you just can't make up. Like, it was just such a good, odd pairing of just two very angry men. And having Shelby in there trying to quell their anger and make them a team was just so good. And after they graduated, they formed Team Hell No, who essentially were a bickering couple who would take their frustrations with one another out on their opponents in the ring rather than each other.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is, I mean, this is like the definition of an oddly paired couple. Like if you looked up, if oddly paired couples was a dictionary entry, you would look this up. And I know some of you out there might not know what dictionaries are anymore, but if you went to the Merriam-Webster website and to look up the definition of a word, you would see a picture of them there, because this is, you can't get more oddly paired than those two. And what's interesting to me about this is that, again, this is another thing I think that makes oddly paired teams really interesting, is that, and again, something I think that makes them really great, is that you have an opportunity to explore different sides of a wrestler that you might not have explored previously, which I don't ever think that I don't ever think that Kane or Brian Danielson, I don't think they ever get enough credit for the comedic skills they have.
It was just on point.
Oh, honestly, they're so good. And I think I have a hard time with this one, because I'm not sure that I could qualify this as an oddly paired tag team. I think I would have to qualify this as an oddly paired trio, because there's no way without Dr. Shelby.
Like, I know he was
Team Hell No is. Yeah, he was.
MVP
he was
of the whole
so
thing
good.
was Dr. Shelby. Like those segments were gold. My favorite
he was
part
so good.
of the whole thing was when they did win the tag titles.
Mm-hmm.
They would both fight over who became champions, and they would keep yelling,
yeah.
"I'm the tag team champions." That was just some of the funniest skits, and the one will never forget, but just because it was so out of character for Kane, is when they're bickering backstage with Brian and AJ Lee. Kane comes out of nowhere with one of those Gatorade buckets, puts it over both their heads, and goes, "I'm going to Disneyland." Like who would have thought that Kane would say that? Like, of all things, it was just hilarious, and it really brought out Kane's comedic side and showed that he wasn't just this big red monster.
Yeah, such good stuff. I mean, it's almost like, they became like must-see television. They were like the thing you had to tune into every week to find out what was going on, because it was so compelling. Because, they had this whole sort of ideal of this dichotomy of they didn't want to be a team, they did want to be a team, they were the tag team champions, they didn't want to be the tag team champions together. And it kept going back and forth, and it was honestly like a giant soap opera. I mean,
it was so good.
It really was. but a very highly entertaining soap opera, like a really good, soap opera for guys.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you had to see what they were doing every week, and if you missed it, you're scrambling on the internet to try and find like what you missed, because so good.
I feel like, and no one would probably believe me, but I feel like the Yes Movement started even then, before it became really big back in 2014. Was that because before the Yes obviously was the No move, like he would do the No first, which turned into the Yes. So I think once he teamed with Kane and they turned face, the Yeses slowly started to come out and the Nos kind of faded away.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, because you brought it up when you first started this pick. You talked about like how many times Kane has been in tag teams where it's been oddly paired tag teams and all these different things, and when we're looking at a list of like Kane tag teams, and you look at this one as one of the top, if not the top tag teams that he was in as far as oddly paired teams, not to say that either one of them is a slouch in the ring, not that Daniel Bryan is not an amazing talent, but we're looking at this for more of their comedic acting skills than we are what they necessarily did in the ring, even though there's nothing wrong with what they did in the ring. It's just they were so good at everything else that I think it overshadowed their in-ring work. And not that that's a bad thing, because
No,
I mean,
it was just so good.
And who doesn't fondly remember Team Hell No? I mean, who doesn't like Team Hell No? I don't know a single person that would say, "Hey, I didn't like that."
No,
Well,
because
Jim Cornette maybe, but
it's going to be sort of the theme of this week's show. But again, we have to keep going back to goofy wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about goofy wrestling that, like, yeah, serious wrestling can be serious and amazing and good. But if you don't have a little bit of like comedy and some goofy in there, then it's just like taking itself too seriously, and then it's just not
absolutely.
as fun.
No,
Like Razor Wing mentioned last week with indie wrestling, like you kind of stop being full of yourself and kind of relax a little bit, take yourself less seriously than what it's been doing.
Yeah, we definitely had a huge conversation about just independent wrestling these days taking itself way too seriously, and the goofy side of wrestling is it's always this interesting draw, because a lot of people that are wrestling fans are like purist wrestling fans, and they're like fans of like the strong style, or this very independent sort of chain wrestling catch can style. But when wrestling doesn't take itself so seriously, you get some of these amazing moments that, again, they probably outshadow what's going on in the ring. And if you do want to take a listen to our full interview with Razor Wing, where we talk about the seriousness of indie wrestling and the goofiness of indie wrestling, check out our podcast wherever you find your podcasts and listen to our previous episode, The Flyest Podcast Ever.
Yeah, that was such a blast. Go check that out when you get a chance. And that was just so much fun. Thanks for being on the show, Razor, and we hope to have you on the show soon. But let's get into your number 3 odd couple.
So it's interesting that we kind of rounded out your third pick with the goofiness of professional wrestling, because I gotta say, in terms of professional wrestling, you have wrestlers that are just phenomenal talents that may not exactly be recognized for that until it's almost too late. And I think one of the wrestlers in this team definitely fits in that category, where he was recognized for the character, the gimmick, the work he did as the gimmick, both as a serious heel, as a goofy baby face. And there were probably a number of things I could have picked with this guy, but I have to say, and this is one of my favorite tag teams, and let me tell you who it is first. So my number 3 pick is Booker T and Goldust.
Oh my God. Talk about goofy wrestling and goofy comedic styles and polar opposites and timing. Those two, again, similar to my last few picks, are teams you would not put together in your mind. You just wouldn't. And when it first happened, you were like skeptical at first, but then once Booker T kindly gave in, that game over. That was it. Well,
and that's very much like your RK Bro pick. Booker T wanted nothing to do with Goldust, nothing to do with the tag team. And then, eventually it just sort of clicked. But Goldust always had these just ridiculously goofy moments. I mean, some of my favorite Goldust moments of all time, dressing as a lumberjack and singing the lumberjack song.
Yeah.
Booker T was so annoyed.
Yeah.
And I really liked when Goldust was messing with the NWO, and he was dressed as Steve Irwin, and he was hunting the NWO, and he found the Shopopotamus asleep in its natural habitat, and then he saw the rare bandana wearing grease rat, where he was talking about X-Pac. Dude, that's one of my legit famous, one of my most favorite moments in all of wrestling. I watch that on YouTube all the time, because I just listen. If we're talking about comedic timing and we're talking about wrestlers that were just perfect at it, Goldust is so amazing at it. And again, he's very much kind of playing the goofy person to the very
Serious.
straight faced Booker
Yeah.
T, and
Well,
it works so well together.
what's funny is that I think it got better after the whole. I don't remember who he was in the match with, but he got electrocuted, right? Remember that? And then he started to have a stutter after that.
I'm pretty sure Evolution did that. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
I think it was
Yeah.
Evolution. Yeah, and then he got that stutter, and then
Yeah.
it became even funnier. And my favorite part is before Sammy was doing it, Goldust was breaking everybody during that time, during his whole stutter and stammer phase. He was breaking everybody backstage. Booker T was breaking. You had him break Austin, and he was just that guy that would just make everyone laugh, even though it was meant to be taken like somewhat more seriously than that.
Yeah, it's interesting that again, I mean, we're talking about oddly paired tag teams, but you have a guy like Booker T who is for as much as his success was in WCW, this guy is still considered like tag team royalty.
Oh, of course.
The what was it, 11 title runs in WCW of Harlem Heat was just unmatched. And here's a guy who got to learn so much in the business from so many people. He got to spend time with legends like Sherry Martel.
Yep.
I mean, just and just invaluable stuff. But he for a long time in his career, he was a tag team wrestler. And Harlem Heat had such success in WCW, and here we are talking about Booker T and Goldust. Like, I feel like for as much as Harlem Heat did in WCW, the stuff with Goldust kind of far outshines that, which is odd in and of itself. Just thinking about that, but this is such a great pairing because it's almost like at the time, like these guys were just parodies of themselves.
I mean, basically.
and then you slap them together, and it just, again, this is something on paper that would probably never work, but it was so good. And again, when we talk about building the perfect oddly paired team, we talk about the veteran buying in, we talk about both members of the team really getting it, and then now I think one of the big building blocks of it is you have to have this situation where one person wants the team very badly and the other doesn't. Mm-hmm. And that person has to win them over. And, half the fun of their storyline is watching Goldust try to win over Booker T. Everything he does. Like, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It was just a fun time, and that was a fun tag team to watch.
Yeah, and I think that phase of Goldust really helped reinvent himself, because before that, if you recall, he was done with Goldust. He had enough. He had burned the suit live on TV. He said, "I'm done being Goldust. This character is crap," and he was done with it. So when he came back with that Booker T in 2002, I think he really reinvented the Goldust character and made it something that he could enjoy doing under the Goldust moniker.
Yeah, and then he was this ultra serious heel during the first run as Goldust, and now he's this goofy baby face. And then we don't really, I don't think we really get to see either time. I don't think we really get the full idea of what a great wrestler Dustin Rhodes really is. I mean, Dustin Rhodes is just a phenomenal talent, and then years and years later, we get the match with him and Cody Rhodes in AEW where everybody was like, holy crap, how did we not see this before? Like, everybody in the business was praising him after that match because he really got to showcase that part of his talents. And I think that, really people got a really good look at him and what he could really do, and that it wasn't just this crazy Goldust character or this goofy Goldust character. Dustin Rhodes really had the goods to back it up.
Yep.
And he never really got that run in WWE, and kind of part of me is really sad about that, because what should have really happened, and Cody Rhodes talked about this on an episode of Talk is Jericho a long time ago. But Cody talked about how there was always this plan to have him and Dustin at WrestleMania, and they had so many great ideas for it, and WWE apparently would talk to them about it and was interested in it, but never once pulled the trigger on it. And I feel like, part of the catalyst of AEW pulling the trigger on it was because WWE didn't. But I know Dustin is very respected in the AEW locker room. I know he's very revered as just a legend and a very intelligent mind in this business. But I really wish we could have seen that happen in WWE. And I would not be surprised down the line if we do indeed get Cody and Roman at WrestleMania and Cody wins the title. I would not be surprised at some point to see Dustin Rhodes show up in a feud with him. I see it coming. I can't believe he hasn't been a part of Cody's story yet. I know Dustin commented that he was at WrestleMania 39. He was up in one of the press boxes. I don't know. I feel like, again, when we talk about underrated wrestlers, I think Dustin Rhodes just fits in that category because he was never really given the opportunity to fully showcase his talents until we come up with this AEW match with him and Cody, which I mean is just
one of their best matches.
Absolutely.
4-year history.
But again, just when you look at Goldust as a whole and you look at Booker T as a whole and everything that they have done in their careers, and then to see them get paired together and just knock it out of the park in ways you couldn't even imagine. This is not just the definition of an oddly paired tag team. This is what we want to see from an oddly paired tag team. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Great pick.
All right. Let's move on to your next pick. What do you got?
My number 2. This one I think is the same one that's kind of out of left field, where we think of like Hogan and Macho Man, but for the more modern era. And when I say modern, I mean like when we were growing up, like the Ruthless Aggression, that sort of time period. Just because, again, this was a team made up of 2 of the top stars of the era, at the time who nobody ever thought would be a team together, and that was the 2-man power trip, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H. Yeah. This was right after Mania 17, where he did the big turn and joined forces with his arch nemesis Vince McMahon. The very next night on Raw is where the Triple H team sort of started, because they had a cage match rematch, Austin and Rock, where Triple H helped Austin beat up The Rock in the cage, and that brought out this more vicious side of Austin, and he would attack. They were both attack wrestlers like Kane and Taker, the Hardys, Lita, with chairs, and just brutalize them week in and week out. And they were just like an unstoppable like machine as a team, which again you never thought would happen, because at the time before the heel turn, Triple H was the biggest heel in the company, and Austin was the biggest babyface. Yep. And like it was just surreal that it even happened. 1 and 2, like they worked surprisingly well as heels together. They were a force during this time, and as they both held major singles titles, Austin was champion and Triple H was the IC champion, and then they beat Kane and Taker doing the tag belts, thus holding at the time basically all of the gold. They were such a force to be reckoned with up until Triple H's legitimate injury where he tore his quad. Like, it may have been short-lived, but man, did it pack a punch, and it almost felt like it came out of left field again. To think the Reign of Terror those 2 would have had as a team had he not tore his quad, it would have been crazy. Yeah.
For me, this is kind of the full circle evolution of Austin as a heel. And Austin talks so many times about how if he had, WrestleMania 17 to do over again, he would have never done the heel turn. And I admit that a lot of his heel turn was very bad. I think a lot of the stuff with the alliance and just, I don't, he had some great moments. Again, we talk about the comedic side of things, him and Kurt Angle and Vince McMahon.
Oh, of course.
Great stuff. But I think a lot of his alliance stuff, and ultimately the heel turn sort of fell flat. However, I feel like this is the full evolution of his heel turn, because we should have seen it coming. Because if you're going to put a tag team together and you have a guy like Austin who is now finally reaching the peak of his heel turn, who else could be with him but the heel power of Triple H? I mean, it's a brilliant pairing. And I love this pick because, again, it's not something you ever thought you'd see. It's not something that's just automatically like, hey, this is this is like a something that is just what's the word I'm looking for? Obvious. There we go. Yes, it's not obvious, but it should have been, and it was. They were. I mean, when they talk about the 2-man power trip, they lived up to that moniker, every bit of it. They did what they wanted. They didn't care about anybody else. They took out whoever they wanted, and I think it's a great pick. They are in, and I have a hard time when I talk about my top 5 favorite matches, because I've got a bunch of matches that I have a hard time ranking above each other. But if I'm looking at the list, one of my top 5 is definitely the night they lost the tag titles on Raw to Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That match is synonymous for a lot of reasons. I mean, that was where Triple H tore his quad, but then yet still finished the match and even let Chris Jericho give him a full-on Walls of Jericho on the announce table. Yeah. So, but honestly, like, if you're talking about crowd reactions, when Jericho and Benoit won that match, that crowd was so hot. They could have literally blown the roof off that building and burnt it to the ground. It was, they were so hot for that. But that's not just the great babyface work of Benoit and Jericho. That's even more the great heel work of Triple H and Stone Cold, because that crowd, I don't think, was as hot to see Benoit and Jericho win as they were to see Austin and Triple H lose, because they were such great heels.
Such a hated team together. Like, they made you want to hate them. And this is, again, Austin, who was the biggest babyface of the Attitude Era, is now with Triple H one of the biggest heels of the company, and running roughshod over the entire show. They would bogart the show every weekend, literally just beat people up just because they could.
Yeah.
Like, they would just run the show by just running in and doing whatever they felt like they wanted to do. Whoever they wanted to attack, whenever, however, they made sure it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, again, it's an odd pairing just because we think, like, it's exactly what you said. We think about how could Austin possibly be paired up with Triple H. But again, I think it's just something we probably should have seen coming if we were looking at things with more of a microscope like we are now. Just being fans and kind of in the moment with it. We may not have seen it coming, but just some brilliant stuff. And when you look at stars of that level, we're talking absolute veterans of the business, guys who know the business inside and out, who 99.999% of the time hit home runs that nobody could catch 6 blocks out of the stadium. They put on such great work together as heels. And, for, like you said, for Austin to go from the most beloved guy in the country to now, or company to now, well, in country probably too.
Both, sure.
And then to make his way into a tag team with Triple H and to do such good heel work. I mean, you have to be a real talent to be able to do that kind of stuff, to hit the top of your game in both babyface and heel. So a really good pick.
Yeah,
I like it.
What is your number 2?
All right, so I feel like maybe in a little different direction than you did. Because again, when talking about top 5 oddly paired teams, I see that you have you're following a pattern of, better and better and better teams, more successful teams. I didn't necessarily go that route because I kind of went more with the odd side of it. However, this tag team may not have had the success that it necessarily needed to make the list as far as title runs or, any of that. But for me, this is almost as close as you can get to an oddly paired team that is successful for that reason. And again, this is another team where I have a member of the team that just never truly got to showcase their true skills until this very moment. But my number 2 is The Miz and Damien Mizdow.
Damien Mizdow is a character that I don't think gets enough love because he went all in on the Mizdow thing. Like, he would be outside mimicking Miz's moves and doing bumps outside by himself, just with himself. Like, who else could have came up with that and did it so well? Like, even when they were in tag team matches, he would sell what Miz is doing in the ring on the apron. Like, it was just genius, and it was hilarious.
Yeah, Miz would get thrown out of the ring, and he'd slide in the ring and throw himself over the top. Just like
it
Miz.
Was just like the most silly, but it worked so well. Like, it was just such a funny, on paper, it sounds stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to mock your partner the entire time and mimic his moves. But in, watching it happen, it was genius. It was absolutely genius.
It really was. They took this sort of so Miz has always kind of had this chip on his shoulder until he really sort of hit his stride, winning the title, defending the title in a WrestleMania main event, and that was the point where we really started to see this idea of the A-lister come out, and Miz being this A-lister Hollywood persona. And so it was really this over-the-top version of who The Miz really was. Interestingly enough, I think it was also a big, screw you to all the people that, never really saw him making anything of himself. And now, here he was with all this massive success, and he was just kind of shoving it in people's faces. And he took that and turned it up to 11. Yep. So then, where do we go from there? Well, let's just be as goofy as possible. Let's think of the goofiest thing that we can think of. What does a Hollywood A-lister need? A stunt double. It's brilliant. It's it's almost as much making fun of Hollywood as it is making fun of The Miz. And the fact that he's this over the top, in his mind, A-lister when nobody else really believes it. And then you have, Damien Sandow come along who, the greatest thing, Damien Sandow won Money in the Bank, and that proved out to be terrible. The greatest thing Sandow ever did was show up during the DX reunion and take all their finishing moves.
Yeah.
That was about the greatest thing he did as Damien Sandow. That gimmick was, I think, really designed for people to hate him as a heel. And it went way too far because people, it kind of jumped the shark because people started hating him as a heel and just hating seeing him altogether. Yeah. But how he turned that around with Damien Mizdow is just an amazing piece of work. It really is. Because it just, it's such a simple idea to take, but to your point, 120% every single night. It didn't matter if it was a house show. It didn't matter if it was television. It didn't matter if it was a pay-per-view. It didn't matter if it was a backstage interview. Whatever this guy did, he put 120% into Damien Mizdow. And again, this is almost the reverse of having the veteran believe in the team. Now you've got, the younger guy who's trying to prove a point is now the one that really believes in the team, and Miz buys in, and it's such a great story for him to be able to have this success as Damien Mizdow when Damien Sandow just fell flat.
Well, if you think about it, Damien Sandow was a rehash of Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
To a point. It was like if
it
you
was
took
basically
Hunter.
the same character, but just not British.
No, if you took Hunter Hearst Helmsley, if Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Matt Stryker had a child, it would be Damien Sandow.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Damien Sandow was like, he was like Triple H, but he also played this, I'm smarter than you, I use bigger words than you,
Yeah.
I say things that I think are going to confuse you because they're soliloquies and, these big $10 words. And it was meant to get him over as a heel. It was meant for people to hate it. But again, I think it really jumped the shark, and people stopped getting heat as a heel. He started getting heat as a character now, where people just don't want to see the character. And at that point, like, you're done. Like, it's over. It's time to come up with something new. But for what he came up with, like what they did with him after that, was just absolutely brilliant in ways that, again, it's such a simple concept, but such a brilliant thing they did.
Yeah,
and did it so well.
Even in the ring when Miz would do promos, like, it wasn't just bumps. He would literally be behind him talking to his opponent with the Miz word for word, and it was just like, what is happening? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes his feud, they would talk to Mizdow and not the Miz because of how over the top Mizdow is behind him, like doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, just great stuff. So again, to me, that's what an oddly paired tag team should be. Something that you remember fondly. That we had for a brief time and then it was gone. But while we had it, it was such magic, and we remember it so fondly. And obviously, I mean, The Miz went on to do great things, and I feel like The Miz is at the point in his career where, he's one of those guys that they talk about where wins and losses simply don't matter anymore. It's not about that. It's about going out there and putting on a great match with anybody. And I mean, the highest compliment I can pay The Miz, at least in my opinion, is that I think The Miz is just as successful as Dolph Ziggler is. Dolph Ziggler is a guy who will show up, do anything you ask of him, and he'll have an absolute great match with every single person on the roster from top to bottom. And he's a guy that the WWE can always rely on. And outside of WWE, I mean, he's got the life. He's got the wife. He's got the family, the show. It's just he's The Miz, and you're not. So yeah. All right, this is it. It's time. We're there.
Number one.
It's the top of the list. Number one. All right.
Mine is going to be the obvious answer, and we're going to harken back to Kane, because again, Kane's my boy, always will be.
Okay.
One of Kane's big breakouts from the Taker's shadow at the time was when he formed a tag team with the newly babyface X-Pac. Kane and X-Pac.
I knew that was coming.
Their styles complement each other perfectly, with Kane being this menacing, style with the size and strength, and X-Pac with the speed and agility. They were an odd pair for sure, but they just clicked not only as a team but also with the audience as well. When they first won the titles with Owen Hart and Jarrett, the fans went ballistic. Nobody thought that this super random team would not only gel together, but become tag team champions together.
Sure.
And especially because I think they were one of the first teams that would remix their theme.
Oh,
and when they did,
so cool.
It was magic. Like, even JR and Lawler were like, this is the first time we've heard a mashup of songs. Like, what is this? And it was, at the time, so cool. I think Kane's intro, the pyro, break it down happened afterwards, and then X-Pac in the ring underneath Kane, doing the crop chops while Kane's doing the raising in the arms. It was just, for that time, so cool. And it really helped show Kane's more human side, because that was one of the first times that you saw Kane be kind of more human, with X-Pac bringing kind of the fun out of Kane. And then you had this Beauty and the Beast relationship with Tori and Kane. And it was just like, I love that team, and I always will. They were, in my eyes, the odd couple that were just so successful. So successful.
So, I mean, and I love the breakup of the team as much as I love
that was
the team
just as
too.
good. That was just as good.
The storyline was phenomenal. All the stuff they did with Tori was great. It was a lot of fun. But that was a very fun tag team, and I think the word that you used that epitomizes it the most is it was a cool tag team. It really was, because again, they did the things that odd pairing tag teams should be doing. They mixed their music together, they mixed their entrances together, and it was just fun because it was things that you never imagined you'd see, and then you're getting all these cool things. It's like WWE Create a Wrestler in real life, like the video game Create a Wrestler, because you're putting people together that normally wouldn't be together. You're giving them custom entrances, and like that's, I think, what really made it cool was that it was like something somebody would do when they were playing a video game, but here it was happening in real life. And
yeah,
I mean, while it happened, it was a great tag team. Very entertaining. The mixture of styles, just with Kane being this gigantic monster of a brawler, and X-Pac being a cruiserweight sort of style to him. Very fast paced, very high flying, big moves, which again was in massive contrast to what Kane did, which was your slower, methodical sort of wrestling, brawling, big power moves, just overpowering people, but it worked.
Yeah.
The meshing of the styles just worked together. Because again, I think they were both so invested in it that you could tell that investment really kind of formed this work ethic as far as the team goes that just made it successful.
And you even said it best. The breakup was almost just as good as the team, because when Tori turned heel on Kane, it resulted in probably one of his best face runs of his entire career. He turned into this scorned but sympathetic, terrifying monster, and I was there for every second of it. He was scorned, hurt, but he just went on this rampage of anger that, like, you really saw Kane wasn't a hurt, but he was still a monster, but he got his feelings crushed. So what does he do? Just ruins everybody's life. Like, it was such a fun face turn for him.
Yeah. It was just it was just fun. And I think, you hinted on the fact that, Kane has had, so many tag teams and things we could have talked about, but I really think that this ranks up there. Aside from his tag team with The Undertaker, I think this ranks up there as his best tag team. It had the look, it had the feel, everything about it was special, because you almost didn't feel like you were watching a tag team of two paired wrestlers together. You felt like you were watching an actual tag team.
Yeah, it was just like, and if it wasn't for X-Pac, Kane wouldn't stop talking with his freaking talk box thing. So X-Pac helped him talk without the talk box.
Yes.
When he said the two famous words Dix always says, "Suck it." It was just like even that, when he said it, I was dying laughing. I was like, first of all, this is gold. I hope this never goes away. And like the fact that Kane's now talking without the talk box is like, yep, good job, X-Pac. You did it. You brought him out. He's now human. Like, he's now a human. He's no longer this freak. Like
such good stuff. Awesome. Well,
what is the
moment we've all been waiting for? Oh, listen. This is, again, I went in a different direction than you did, and while this may be anticlimactic,
oh boy.
This was really the first team I thought of when you suggested odd paired teams to me. Because to me, this was not just odd in the fact that, it was, two guys together that maybe shouldn't be paired together or what have you. This was odd to me because it was just strange to begin with. And so my number one pick is Road Warrior Animal and Heidenreich.
Oh my God. You're going to pick LOD 2005?
That is what I'm going to pick.
Listen. You're my friend, and like, we're cool, but like they were the worst team, and they were the
Yes.
worst version of the Legion of Doom that's
They
out
were.
there. They were never. They shouldn't have never even been Legion of Doom. It was awful.
Well,
Just
that's what I'm saying.
awful.
It was an odd pairing. You know, Heidenreich coming out with the weird sort of LOD-ish face paint and his blonde hair, you know, kind of looking like a demented, oversized version of 80s Sting. And then you had Road Warrior Animal, who was just
Warrior Animal.
I can't imagine for 1 second of his entire life he ever bought into this thing.
I don't think
I can't
he did
imagine he was ever happy about it.
I would hope.
I mean,
it was
Heidenreich might have been one of the oddest wrestlers in the history of WWE. I mean, it was just he was downright creepy, and I'm not talking creepy like, you know, Snitsky and, you know, Maria's feet. I'm not talking that kind of creepy. I'm talking about like cornering Michael Cole in the back and reading him a poem. Creepy.
Yeah.
That's a whole different level of creepy.
I don't think he would have survived in the current wrestling world at all.
I can't believe he survived that. I mean, and again, I have to state this. I have nothing against the person. I have nothing against the wrestler. I have nothing against his in-ring talents. I'm just saying that whatever combination of creative, whether he had anything to do with it or not, came up with this. I mean, I don't know that we talk about wrestlers being able to, you know, make chicken salad out of chicken poop when they're given a chicken poop as a gimmick. And I don't think anybody could have made this thing work. So what do we do with him? Well, let's make him an honorary member of the Legion of Doom. Let's just take it so far past the line of sanity that there's no return.
Even the new theme was bad. Like even the new version of the theme was just as bad as the team itself. Like
everything about it was bad.
Was just dumpster fire.
I don't know how anybody could ever be like, I don't know how announcers could talk about it and not be like, I don't know how they could be excited about it. I don't understand any of it. It is just every single aspect of this team is odd. It is an odd pairing. It is, I mean, this to me, this is an even odder pairing than Undertaker and Nathan Jones. Which, by the way, believe me, if Nathan Jones had actually wrestled in that WrestleMania match, I mean, I know, like, what did he come out for, like 2 seconds or something? But if he'd have wrestled that actual match, then I might have put them on the list. But they are they are a drop in the bucket in comparison to the oddness of Animal and Heidenreich. I'm sorry, it's just. To me, that's the oddest pairing of all time. So it had to be number one on my list because really, you know, you took oddly paired teams in one direction, and that was not the direction I thought of when you suggested it to me.
Yeah.
But this would have been, no matter what, I think this would have been the very first team that I would have picked up on. It just instantly hit my mind. I was like, I never got it. I still don't get it. I don't think anybody will ever get it. No. I would love for whoever was doing creative at the time to do a podcast and talk about why that. Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should hunt down
whoever made that idea, whoever created that,
and just let them talk about like what was the inspiration behind that. How did they come up with that? Why did they do it? You know, let's get some answers here. But definitely for me, the oddest pairing of all time.
Just a dumpster fire.
Indeed it was.
Just like when I was thinking of this, I was thinking of like successful odd pairings in my eyes. The ones that you didn't think would work, but actually worked very well. That one was not even on my mind just because of how I tried to block it out as if it didn't exist because of how bad it was. Heidenreich itself was a failed character before they tried to rehash him as LOD 2005. Like it was like there was no saving that after that. There was just no coming back from that.
Yeah.
And again, it has nothing to do with Heidenreich. It just he was given really, really bad creative.
Yeah. And that's again, I think that's the big takeaway from this is that, there's just a lot of bad creative involved in these decisions. And, sometimes, you take a shot at something and, you hope it works, you throw the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. But this one was just bad. And to me, whether we're talking about great teams, good teams, what have you, this one was just the oddest thing I could think of. I'm sure somebody will come up with something odder, but for me, that was just the weirdest, oddest pairing I could think of.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, in terms of that, yeah, I agree. But also no.
Yes. Well, two very different but equally great sets of top fives this week. This was a really fun. It's a really fun topic to discuss.
Many odd couples out there.
Yeah, definitely fun. As a side note, I meant to mention this earlier, and I sort of forgot because we got talking about other things as far as that goes. But there was a point in my life where I was dating a girl with extremely long blonde hair. Like we're talking like down below her back. And so she was not the hugest wrestling fan, but I got her into wrestling as I do. I tend to get people into professional wrestling. And this was right around the time of Booker T and Goldust. Nice. And she became a very big fan of that tag team. And so she decided that that year for Halloween, we were going to hand out candy. And she decided that we should dress up as Booker T and Goldust. So I put on a wig that, gave me some Booker T-esque hair, and I got myself a Booker T shirt, and I had like his track pants on, and like I was like backstage Booker. And my mother, who is a professional seamstress, made my girlfriend a Goldust suit.
Nice.
And that's so she went as Goldust.
That's pretty
Goldust,
cool.
The entrance version of Goldust with the the long blonde hair. So so that's
good.
Yeah, so there was a little bit of a sentimental pick in that one as remembering an interesting time in my life, but still a fun topic to talk about. And I'm sure there's many more teams that we could discuss, but we've definitely each got our favorites.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, all right. Well, I think that about is going to wrap things up for us here. So we definitely want to thank all of our listeners for listening to the Opinion City podcast with myself, Ralph Heinmarch, and my tag team partner and co-host, Parma Sean Russell. If you guys like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our social media, which is at Opinion City Pod, to all your friends, family, and colleagues. And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to check out the episodes prior to this one and let us know your opinions on our topics that we've been doing so far, as well as this week's topic. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and are we on Threads yet?
We are on Threads. Just be aware, there's not a whole lot of content there, but keep an eye out because we're going to ramp that sucker up too.
Yeah, so we're on Threads as well at Opinion City Pod. And this has been a Mancast Network production, and we'll see you next time, guys.
This is also Ann here. You're listening to Opinion City Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.